Good evening, all, and welcome to the Select Board meeting of September 7th, 2021. And in compliance with Governor Baker's decision of June 16, 2021, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state emergency and extended until April 1st, 2022, this meeting will be conducted both in person at the Great Hall, Town Hall, and virtually via Google Meets for those who wish to participate remotely. Due to potential technical difficulties in the virtual meetings, it is requested that anyone wishing to speak that attend the meeting in person or send comments to the Select Board office by 4:00 p.m. the day of the meeting. If at any time during the meeting there is no audio issues, the virtual portion of the meeting will be closed and the person meeting will continue. And the address is included here. Also, this meeting will be recorded by Smack Cable Television and may be broadcast live and may be live streamed at www.stoughtontv.org. A recording of this meeting, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceeding will be posted on the town's website and or Smack as soon as possible after the meeting. If live broadcast or live streaming is unsuccessful, times are approximate and items may be taken out of order at the chairman's discretion. So with that, I will call this meeting to order and ask that if you are able and willing to please rise and join us in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sure. Right. No. And if I could remind my colleagues, if we're not talking, would you try to mute your mics so that we don't have the problems we've had. We've been, knock on wood, getting a little better at it. But again, we're not getting the as many people on the live stream. So, and to make sure that you please keep your mic as close as possible, as some of us speak at different volumes and it makes it harder for us to hear each other, never mind for the residents to hear us during the meeting. All right, so I will open the meeting with the citizens' requests. Is there anybody in the hall who would like to be heard under citizens' requests? And I will put the, hearing none, I will put the offer out to anybody that is joining us remotely, which I don't see anyone. Okay, with that, I will go to the Select Board comments. I'll start from my left to right. Mr. Gito.
No comments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gito. Ms. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do have several comments. The first one is I attended FinCom's most recent meeting where they had a guest speaker, Cinder from Hilltop, and the purpose of me attending, not only because I am the liaison, but I wanted to hear more about what she said about our financial policy specific to debt service. That's the debt service policy that's within the operational budget, so inside. And I recommend to the board that we delay making a decision on changing our current policy as a result of that conversation and discussion. Two things came to mind. One is, in order to make a change to our debt service policy, we need a detailed multi-year capital project plan. That's one. And then number two is she is working with Sue Herman and Dr. Grimm to consider adding another measurement of rating for us instead of, or in addition to Moody's rating, add Standards & Poor. So because they would give us more accolades or lower interest rates proposed because we pay such great attention to our policies, and it's a lot of other things that's built into that. So I am recommending that we delay making any changes to our policy. So that's one. Do we need to take a vote on that, or are we just in agreement to
Go
that?
easily with the consensus of the board. If anybody's in opposition to that? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't need to take a vote, as long as everybody's okay with it.
Okay. Then number two is, at our last meeting, I mentioned that I attended the CPC recent committee meeting, and one of the outcomes of that meeting was they talked about a plot of land that was 24 acres, and we didn't know what they were really referring to. So I would recommend that we go have them on the agenda for executive session so we could hear in full, in totality, what their proposal is. And I don't want to say what the location is now because it may be under negotiation.
Okay.
So can we
We
make,
can, you know, let's get that, all the documentation from them before we put it on the agenda, make sure we have everything that they want us to have,
okay,
and a suitable time to look at it and review it and, you know, come up with any questions we have. You know, I think I already know a little bit about it from past conversations with people, if it's what I think it is,
okay,
which would be easy. But I want to stay with the fact that, you know, sometimes we do put things on the agenda quickly. And I want to make sure that when we do, that everybody has time to review documents and then, and go with it from there, so. But yeah,
Okay.
so we should be by, 21st, Robin?
21st? Okay. And then the last and final comment that I have is regarding the proposed SEOC committee. That's the Stoughton Equal Opportunity Committee. So develop the mission statement and submitted that to our town council. They gave us their response. There was no liability in the name of or the title of the committee, and really the description of the mission statement. They tweaked a few things, but they did ask us, because in the the mission statement, it stated that the term limit for the members was 2 years. They asked us to consider staggering those dates. So shall we take a motion on that? Or are you open to doing that, or did you want to see that in more detail?
I'd rather wait on that because we just got that a few hours ago.
Okay.
Maybe some people haven't even looked at it yet.
Okay,
And it was red marked quite a bit.
yeah.
So I would like to speak with people individually as well, just get a sense of where we are as a board. I
Okay,
think that's going to be, you know, let everybody have input, and then we can bring it back. Because you never know, there might be something in there that collectively, we don't want to, we send it back to them and say, you know, this is what we'd like to see added.
okay, okay.
You know, I mean, let's make sure that, you know, we do that, so when we come back, we're not doing all that heavy lifting here. When we're ready to present it, we want the residents to see that collectively this board supports.
Okay.
And
there is a method to my madness, and that the method to the madness is when I met with Mr. Cavey, and we documented some proposed criteria for members of this proposed committee, and I'm sure Steve will talk a little bit more about that during his time. But one of the things, we received 15 applications, and these 15 applicants are highly educated, all are great candidates, but what they had in common was they really did not have government experience or municipal experience. So one thing I would like to do is, as we are moving forward with the proposed committee, is that we provide them with a copy of the mission statement so they know they're buying into our process and what the goal of the committee is. So that's one. And then number two is we outline an orientation for them, and that's so they really understand open meeting laws, Massachusetts state laws, because we want this new committee to be successful, and we want to give them the training before they start taking this charge and moving forward. So
Great.
one is that we have to have the mission statement finalized so we could give it to them and they can buy into that. And the second, that they go through an orientation that includes open meeting.
I like orientation, but I would actually maybe throw right over to the town manager and require this for all boards and commissions. Because there's a lot of them that have never gone through it, and it's very easy to take the Attorney General's handbook on open meeting and pencil whip it that you took it, that you read it, and people don't. So that's probably something I don't see anybody disagreeing right now. Maybe we should do that, mandate it, and try to, with the state, try to set up 3 different sessions and tell people you have to attend one of these sessions. You know, so when you're, I'm going right through. All right. All right. Yeah. Oh, this one. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Just because we have people who apply, we have the right to vet who should sit on the committee. So we'll have to look at whose strengths are best. I mean, just to give them an insight on how town government works. I mean, that's a good thing for the ones that will really qualify for it. But I just don't want to think that this could be the only pool. Maybe we might have to put it out for like another spin to see who can come in. But if we have the right amount to meet the group, that's fine. You know what I mean? That just because some people just apply and they, like you say, they don't bring any strengths. And I don't, this is such an important thing that you need people to have strengths so that they can bring others into the direction and the mission statement.
Right. So I would like to respond to that, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. So there were 15 applications, and all applications, they had no problem with saying what race they were. There were a mix of gender, male, females, and they all had leadership positions in the field of human resources, health equity, and you would be really, it would be really a good thing for us to have either of those 15 applicants on this committee. So they all had like master's degrees, specialized training, law degrees, doctors in this, social workers. And anything else did I miss? Diversity skills, leadership. Mr. KV, was there anything else? Oh, one more thing. We talked about, we wanted to make sure that everyone recognized that this was nonpartisan. And by definition of our mission statement, it says that, you know, it's nonpartisan. And because we can only delegate based on our current authority, by that definition, it's nonpartisan. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And then I'll hand the baton.
Ms. Rivers, can I say one more thing? Quite frankly, I agree with you 100% on the qualifications of those people. I've never seen a pool of people that were as broadly qualified as those people on any committee that I've seen.
Thank you, Mr. Cheatham. Mr. KV, you wanted to bring up a couple of things?
Yeah, so there were, a couple of, as Vice Chair Roberts mentioned, we had met before. We discussed this the other day. Some of the criteria. There were some, certainly some things we had in mind that we wanted to if at all possible, seek out. Or we did this. This committee, in particular, is charged with something that is both extremely necessary and also, fraught with potential hazards. I'll say, where things can be easily either, miscommunicated in a way that could cause, harm, or could direct policies that are in ways harmful to the community, and which is counter to exactly what it is we're trying to achieve. So, we had some, at least I'll express, at least for myself, that I had some concerns that I wanted to do this right. I wanted to make sure that we got the right people and that provided the types of information they will need to begin the process that they'll be working through. For myself, I did want to, when I was first looking through the applicants, I came up with some criteria for myself before I started looking at them to see what types of things I was looking for. And for me, one of the important criteria was a high level of education in a field that was sort of relevant to what this committee will be charged with. And I thought that would be a filter of some kind, and it turned out to not be a filter at all. Everybody is extremely well educated and really fabulously qualified. So that's excellent. I'm really grateful that citizens of our town are willing to take their skills and their strengths and volunteer them for the sake of the community. There was one concern that I'll be a little bit more overt about, and I'm willing to be challenged on this if anybody has a differing opinion. But I did notice that there are two applicants with the same last name, and I presume that they're married. With a committee of 5 people, I have concerns about open meeting law, issues related to that. If it's 5 people and 2 of them are communicating with each other, neither will be able to communicate with anybody else on the committee in a meaningful way. And so, I do have a concern that we avoid putting people on the committee who could potentially have a conflict like that. The ability to communicate with at least one other member of your board, and it might always be the same person, is very valuable. And maintaining the integrity of the deliberation process, while also being able to sort of bounce your ideas off somebody that you're working with is important. So I do have just a general concern that we should avoid that if possible. I can see why someone might disagree with it, but that's something I think would be in the best interest of our mission here. I think that's a bit. You covered so much of what we discussed. I feel comfortable leaving it at that. We have discussed being very clear about the mission, and Vice Chair Roberts has done a great job. Spending the time actually writing these things up and making it very clear. We also really want to be clear with the people who end up working on this committee that they are that we can only delegate authorities of any kind that we actually possess, right? We can't delegate something that we can't act on. This is an advisory group, so we're really looking for advice. Nevertheless, it's not helpful to receive advice on things that we can't action. So as much as it might be frustrating for people on a committee to have ideas that they want to branch out, we do have important lanes that people will have to stay in, and it will be difficult sometimes for them to know that, not having previous government experience in the past. It will take us a little bit of patience to perhaps help them and help guide them on that. Open meeting law is certainly one piece of it, but as I've seen with some other committees that are extremely well-meaning, sometimes we get advice on what the school should do, or on just areas that are outside of our authority. And I know in the select board, I've received advice on operations, which is also, in a sense, none of my business. So I'm allowed to, at least to the extent that you're talking about day-to-day operations. And so making sure that this committee is able to understand where the goalpost is, and also where the offsides lines are, that they can hopefully get important work done in a way that's also focused on things that we can actually action. So I'll stop there. But that was the what I just had to add. Ms. Roberts, yeah.
Is there a motion in that, Mr. Cavey?
Or are you looking for a motion specifically regarding the the having spouses on the board?
Yes.
Because I would be willing.
We should just write it into the
That's,
directive.
yeah, I don't think we
Right.
need to make, that's another one.
don't
And
make it a
it's
motion,
really
just
not
put it right
on,
in there,
so we could take a vote. So I'd rather shy away from, I'm breaking my own rule. Rather shy away with having a motion made now. But actually, you know, it's really, I think, we're getting really too into the weeds on that. I mean, I think everyone's going to vote for somebody, and you vote the way you want to vote. You know, and I'll be honest with you, my position is sometimes government's the problem. So not having government experience might be a help to us. You know, I mean,
Amen.
a fresh look from the outside of people that haven't been involved with the, you know, that kind of stuff. So who knows? I mean, but
Well, just to your point, I agree with that entirely. I just want to make sure that they don't inadvertently break the laws.
right,
break
right.
the
No, I
rules.
agree with you.
That's it. But having their fresh perspective is always needed.
All right. All set, Deborah?
And that's it for me. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Mr. Cavey on Selectmen's comments.
One of the items on the agenda for tonight references the town manager's annual review. I do have a comment on that, but it's not related to what we'll be discussing tonight, specifically about the annual review for 2022. So an upcoming review, next year's review. Each year we have to look at our guidelines, our criteria, and reassess it to see if there's any changes necessary. And we also have annual goals specific to a given year. We'll have to reassess those, as well as have additional communications about any sort of like in this case it would bonus related to performance. So. I just more than anything else ask that we schedule that sooner rather than later, so that we can provide the town manager with the framework for 2022, so that she's able to prioritize accordingly. So other than that, I have no other comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I don't know if it's a comment, it's more of an update from the Housing Trust Subcommittee. They are, well, I'm part of it, so we are at 90% ready to meet what goal that they have set for themselves. And I just want to say that to Barry Kessler and Michael Barrett, Mark Zamanian, and Joe Scardino, because they have carried it forward after the other select board member left, and they've been working diligently. I mean, they've done a tremendous job. I've been involved in several trusts, and to what they've achieved so far is very, very unbelievable. They would formally like to ask the board if we would look at 2 dates for them, so that they can put a presentation forward to show you where they are, how the declaration is, how the trust has been drawn up, and how they're ready for the special legislation to go forward too. So that the 2 dates are, and they would like September 21st, if that's okay. If not, a second date could be October 5th, but the September 21st one gives them more time to reach their other boards where they have to do some presentating and stuff like that. So they would formally like the 21st, September 21st date, if they could get on our agenda.
Okay, I haven't looked that far out yet. How, does anyone, Deb or Tom?
So what I can tell you is September 21st is the night, we're going to virtually open the warrant on September 14th, because that's just basically
Right,
pro
and then
forma.
close.
The 21st will be the night we close.
Right.
There is a potential warrant article associated with this. So it might not be a bad idea to have them present prior to you all as a board making a determination if you're going to include that article. For you to include it and then have them present a week later
Right.
doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. I know it'll be a busy night. I'm supposed to do my financial, 3 to 5 year financial presentation, and I was going to do the capital that night with it, but there's no reason that can't be moved out to October 5th, yeah, I could move those to October 5th. It would be just more logical to have this on the 21st, if there's going to be a
They're ready.
consideration of a
They're
warrant.
ready.
Yeah, all the documentation's in order and place. I think I forwarded it to the board.
Okay.
But I would agree with that. That would make sense.
Deb? How are we looking on the agenda for the 21st? Is it, last I looked, it wasn't heavy. Okay, all right, so why don't we commit to the 21st now, then? All right, if you can put that committee on, and
If you had ever watched one of the meetings, they have everything down, like it's a discussion about this, and they have it to a 12-minute talking zone, you know what I mean?
Geez, maybe we should get that going.
That's how tight, that's how tight things are.
we're going to electrify the chairs and time them, you know? Okay, so no, all right, so you can reach out to them, let them know that it'll be
Okay.
on the agenda for the 21st.
I appreciate that. The only other item I have is, I'm not looking for a vote tonight, but if the board wanted to vote on it tonight, they could. I would like to just bring up a proposal to help out Stoughton residents for a change, the people in town. I know we help out business and stuff, but I would like to help out, and I sat down, I thought about this, and I said, if we could please look at the residents that are 80-plus, living in their own homes. These are people that are living in their own homes, that own them, that if we could do something good for them, like waive their trash fees. But you have to be 80-plus, residing in your own home, not renting it, not owning it and renting it to somebody. You have to be physically in it. And I'm not talking about a two-family because they have the right to rent the second floor so they could cover that. I'm just talking single-family, 80-plus residents to give them a break, because most of them are all on retirement. We know that. There's very few that are out there working, although there are a lot of them still working, and it's a shame that they have to work like that. So I don't think it's too much to ask to waive a trash fee for a handful of people. It's a small thing. We only give them $2 off or $4 off as a senior. That's a disgrace.
All right, let's look, because I actually have been working on something similar, because this board's heard me over and over and over and over and over
Well, this is
again.
something I don't want to tie to something else that's
Well, no,
going to
because
not
it
go
deals with-
forward.
No, it deals with trash as well.
Okay.
You know, and because, trash is getting out of hand. Multifamilies that are, some are prone to 5 and 6, turnovers of apartments in a year, and that was never intended to be part of our trash fee. And I would like to look at as well as excluding these multifamilies from just unlimited trash. Household trash is household trash. It's not cleanouts. That's an expense that the landlord bears if their tenants leave this stuff behind. Furniture is not household trash.
I've seen
So-
people come from out of town to a multifamily,
Yeah, and-
back up and drop it off because they knew the person that was there.
Exactly, so,
Mr. Chairman, I do
yeah.
have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Kerr, how did you choose 80 years old?
It was a tough thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was tough, but I figured 80 fit the number for me, just from knowing the people I work for, and late in their life, they're hooking up because their cesspools have finally come to an end, and to see them say that all they have for savings is like 10,000 and a sewer connection of what they need is like 15. So how do you strangle somebody like that? You know what I mean? It just seems to be the medium person. There's a lot of 70-year-olds that are still driving dump trucks and stuff like that. I see them all the time. I work with them. Joe knows it too. That group hasn't quite stepped off to the side, but I just thought some of the 80-year-olds
If I could, I think, and I know we certainly are not looking to go and, pay as you throw or rating how much each individual pays for trash versus others. But there may be an interesting way to do this and protect it from, let's say, an 80-year-old homeowner who also has 3 kids living with them, and they're producing just as much trash as everybody else, and someone's helping to pay the rent or the mortgage.
Well,
We could do.
This is what I said.
Yeah.
They had to be alone, like their husband and
And
wife.
I think
live
the way we
beside
could kind of monitor that, we might be able to look at a scale of water sewer usage, because the vast majority are on water or sewer. If they're using a certain amount that we know is consistent with a 2-person household, let's say 2 elderly people, we could there is probably an average rate of a 4-person household, a 2-person household. We could look at sort of a cross measure of 80 and above, or whatever number we pick and above, then cross that with a water sewer usage somehow, to just ensure that somebody doesn't have their kids living with them helping to pay, because that's not the spirit of this. But the spirit is the 2 elderly people in a home who are living on a fixed income, who are producing maybe 1 bucket of trash, paying just as much as somebody who's producing a huge amount of trash. So I'm happy to try to look at how we can police it so it's fair, but protects the town from being taken advantage of, and at the same time just a suggestion, to try to police that a little bit so we control it, but still help the people who truly need it. Because unfortunately, people will take advantage.
Some of the elderly, they're out there at 7 o'clock in the morning watering flowers, and they're on sewer. So you're going to start to see something like that. I
don't think it'd be excessive,
I think it's
though.
just easier that if we did put it out there for it, that you say, come to the town hall, bring proof, and do it that way. I don't want to get on a merit system and measure who's using what for water. I don't care how much water they use. All I want to do is give them this small break.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's much to ask, because I know there's 3 families out there that we're not supposed to be picking up, and we're picking them up.
Mm-hmm. No, I conceptually don't disagree. I'm just giving some options on how to maybe just narrow it a little bit, but we absolutely.
I sat
again,
all night
defer
and
to
I figured
the,
it
yeah,
out.
No, I defer to the board, obviously, but.
Just call the town hall or show up and prove through the assessor's office or whoever, and that's easy, that this person, Lou Gito and his wife live by themselves up on West Street in a single-family home. They're not rent to anybody. Lou's 80 years old, so give the guy a break. I'm using you as an example, Lou, sorry.
I think he just outed your age, though.
That's what I thought. Mr. Kerr, is there a motion on that?
I have
Not on
written
the
one,
agenda,
but
though.
Joe doesn't want to bring it, let it go forward.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, let's write something up, come up with the plan, what it is, so that when we vote it, everybody's clear what we're voting.
Well, I'll just tell you what the simple motion I wrote was. I won't call it in for a second. I'll just tell you, it said, to allow that any resident of the age of 80-plus years that owns their own home, single-family home, and resides there, that the trash fee not be levied upon such property. That was the simple motion. Didn't have to get exorbitant. We don't have to be detectives. You can kind of figure out who owns their own homes. The voting list is very simple. People who want to do it, some people might not even come and ask for it because they won't know.
Yeah, we could go by how many people are registered in the house as well. That's just another way to look at it. I'm just trying to
Everybody
protect
votes
from,
either, though.
someone might own, but somebody might own their home and still have their children living there, and that's not the spirit of this. But
Well, that's what I
we
meant.
could look at
It could
registered
say in there,
voters
you have to be residing there
alone.
alone.
Yeah.
And if you own a 2-family, you're off the thing, whether you're renting it or not, because the potential is there to rent it.
So why don't we wait until we get a proposal put together that has all the proper words in it?
All right,
Right, that's what we'll do. Good idea, though.
for the next meeting.
Okay, great.
And perhaps talk with our manager.
All right. Thank you.
And-
That's all I have.
Okay, and I just have one on the trash subject again. Madam Town Manager, there are people that just don't know the rules or don't care about the rules. I think there's a combination of both. I'd like to see if you could find a way to put an insert into the suburban shopper that goes to every home, and that insert be the DPW's guidelines on trash. about trash that's not supposed to be put out, in 2 to 3 days before trash, that people's out-of-town trash is not allowed as well. What's allowed, what's not allowed, and the number to call to pick up, because it's just getting out of hand. And I think that, like I said in that earlier, is that I'm going to come up and try to get some verbiage that we could use that is in similar communities, is we have a lot of multifamily units that go through people left and right. I see it in my own neighborhood. And, we're getting cleanouts here that does not fit what household trash is. That's the trash that we create. If we should be recycling, that we don't, have as much trash. But there are a lot of people that don't at all. And it's bad. It's getting bad. People know about it. Every time I talk about trash, I get phone calls after. But I'm going to do this, and I'm going to let people know that if they see something, they should call the Department of Public Works. Those are the people. And we were given an email a while back that talked about the DPW making some changes to how they operate, that they may be able to catch some of this stuff. The earlier comment that we're picking up people that we shouldn't be, I know for a fact that there is an effort to curb that. Now, we're never going to get to being perfect. I wish we could. But there's always somebody who's going to try to beat the system anytime they can. But I know for a fact that they are, trying to get better at that, and they have, because I'm the one that's calling, and believe me, trust me, they don't like hearing from me. So, as the town manager, where they're smiling in the corner. And you've got a real big smile on your face, too, bigger than normal.
Well, I haven't had as many phone calls from you in the past couple of weeks about it, so that's a sign it's going okay.
But it is, we have a more active multifamily use, as we know, in this town. And in some of the areas, and I guarantee people can say, they'd be calling saying, yes, my neighborhood's like that, too. And just the route that I travel, leaving my home and going out towards Route 24, you got multiple places, same place, 3 times, 4 times a year, and, they leave out basically all their furniture. It's like they must be going to another state and don't need the furniture. But, that's not household trash, and that's a tax on the system for the taxpayers. And, it's okay for us to say, no, that's not going to be allowed. So, but if you could make sure that gets in, because last time I tried this, I got the song and dance how we couldn't put it in with the water bill because that's not allowed. So let's get our own spot and get that out so everybody knows. Because I honestly think that most people just don't know the rules.
We will put that out, and then the other thing is that not only is DPW changing their sort of patrolling of it, we also have a code enforcement officer now who, if there's major dumping going on a property, it's kicking over to him, or people can also call that in there, and Dana goes out, and he actively is pursuing these now as well, the ones that are more dumping, if you will, on a property. So we're between both ends, between DPW doing a little bit of more patrolling of it and code enforcement working on it. I'm happy to see anecdotally that you're seeing some positive movement, because I think the combination of the two is probably what's driving a little bit of a change, and that's a good start. It's not there, but it's a good start.
And with that, my next one was just the, finally, you mentioned it, we have code enforcement in Stoughton. I brought this up the first time, I believe, around 2007, maybe a little later than that, and it was former town manager, Frank Crimmins. Boy, I'm doing good tonight. Frank Crimmins put it into the budget for the first time when he was town manager. And it finally, and to the town manager, how many times did I call you? How are we making out with our zoning enforcement? How are we making out? And we did get a report. I hope everybody had the opportunity to review that report. This guy is knocking it out of the ballpark. And we know that he's doing a good job because there's a lot of complaints coming into town hall. And again, it's not people that are doing anything dishonest. Well, not all, but are not trying to beat the system, but some just didn't know that they couldn't do that. And when you drive through our town, those of us who have been around here for 100 years and sat on this board, 3 of us for about 100 years as well, we see the difference in this town. We see the difference. and more people moving from the outside. It's not that type of community that we remembered everybody, or knew everybody driving down the street. Those days are gone. It's becoming a different town. So it's not bad to remind your residents, because I think everybody wants their properties to look good, their neighborhoods to look good, but we need them to do their part as well. It's not up to the DPW by themselves. So with that, do I hear any other selectmen's comments? Okay, so let us move on to the town manager comments.
So just to follow up quickly on that, not only do we have Dana, but we also now have the Assistant Code Enforcement Officer, which was a current full-time employee who had what he believed was extra time to take this on as an assistant, and we were grateful for that. And he's doing a lot of the paperwork and bookkeeping, so that not only do we have Dana going out there doing the enforcement, but we've got proper tracking and follow-up, which is why we're able to get you a spreadsheet, keep on this, make second visits if we have to, issue fines where we can, and eventually maybe look forward to having our own type of I call it a municipal court or a municipal system, because if we put them into the Commonwealth system, frankly, the district system, they're just so backlogged and so overloaded, it goes nowhere. And the people who are consciously perpetrating these acts know that. It's not the person who doesn't know any better, and they'll fix it. That person will fix it when someone knocks on their door. But for the repeat offenders, for the people who know better, we just don't have the teeth. So that will be the next major step in that, but that's going to take a little bit of a heavy lift legally. There'll be a lot to do with that, but I think it will be worth doing, particularly now that we have the paperwork where we can really track how many multiple repeat offenders do we have, and is it worth us going that direction next? So that's just a follow-up on that. If I might, I have a few things to discuss. I want to discuss briefly and very carefully, because there are privacy rights, the situation of the people at the train station. We are addressing it. I had a very angry person come in my office this morning. I tried to explain we cannot arbitrarily institutionalize people. We also, while we could technically arrest for loitering, if we do, they go right through the court system and right back out on the street. That does not get people help, and it doesn't really protect the community, because even if they don't go back to that exact spot, they're going to go back somewhere else. There are substance abuse issues here. There are mental health issues. The police chief has one officer who has literally spent hundreds of hours trying to work to assist these particular people in getting help or convince them that they need help. They are bringing somebody out from Brockton Hospital to actually do an in-field analysis while the person is in their regular condition, as opposed to after they may have been detained for a few days and then analyzed, because they may get a different analysis. Again, we have to comply with the law and people's freedoms, and we also have to protect the community. It's an extraordinarily delicate balance. It's hard for me, because sometimes I get yelled at that I don't care about the community, and sometimes I get yelled at that I don't care about the person on the bench. The reality is I care about both. And they have competing interests right now. And so we're trying to balance that and do what we have to do, obviously, for the community. That's our job. But we do also have to consider that we can't break the law and violate people's human rights. That's, I can't just arrest people, and I can't institutionalize people. And it is very clear, unless they are deemed an immediate threat to themselves or to the public, we do not have a right to institutionalize. So I just want to give a brief update on that. It's a very difficult subject.
If I may, somebody that I've known for years and years and years, who I trust very much, and thankfully she trusts me as well, called me irate about the same thing. And I told her just that. I mean, they have a right. We don't have the right to just say, get off the bench. We don't care where you go, because they're just going to go somewhere else. And that I understand that these people have been over to Brockton a couple times, but then they sign themselves out, which they have the right to do, and therefore they have their rights. Well, this person wasn't happy with that answer. And she said this to me. She says, I'm going to ask my daughter, because this is what she does. She's an area representative for this. And then called me back 2 days later and apologized and said, she said the same thing you said. So, I mean, it's not something, and I've talked with our own human relations and public safety on this subject. There's one gentleman in the room tonight that I've had conversations with, and we want to help people. We don't want to just bounce them out of the town. And unfortunately, sometimes there's not a lot you can do, even if you want to help. That even in that role, your hands are tied to a point.
I'm working.
Tough issue.
I'm
but
actually
we are looking at it.
Yeah, I'm actually working on trying to get to an AA meeting myself, where I can get someone to come in and try to 12-step the people involved, if possible. It may take an addict to speak to an addict or a recovering addict to speak to them. There's a fear of detox, there's a fear of health issues. And on the flip side, there is public health and safety as well that has to absolutely be considered. Yeah, it was hard this morning. The person left my office and said, well, I guess you don't care if he lays there and dies. And I mean, you know, so
Right to be there.
he has the right to be there.
Talk to him.
He has that right. But on the other hand, the public has the right to enjoy a community and feel safe in that community. So it's very, very delicate. But I just wanted to give an update because I know you are all getting calls, and when I have angry people, I don't usually have, knock on wood, I'm very lucky. Very rarely do I have angry people or people who walk out of my office angry. But sometimes I just can't give an answer that people want to hear. And in this case, it's better if I can give an answer they don't want to hear. When I can't give any answer at all is the worst case scenario. And that's really the problem I faced today. I didn't have an answer for the gentleman either way. And that's a frustration for me, but it doesn't mean that we're not trying to get an answer. So I just did want to touch base on that. On another sort of not so thrilling note, but an update that needs to happen, COVID-19, we had a little update from Janice. The cases are not skyrocketing, but we did have 18 over the weekend, over a 3-day weekend, about 6 positives a day. That's not outrageous in Stoughton, but just enough that we are taking note. We will continue to comply with the governor's orders in this town as far as my recommendation and what Board of Health is agreeing with me on at this point. That's what we did before. It worked for us before. Some towns are beginning to go mask mandate, others aren't. If the governor believes that, that Commonwealth-wide this is what we're going to do, then I think this is what we're going to do. It has served us well. I think people are operating cautiously again and making individual choices. But just be aware that we are monitoring it. And I just want people to know Janice is on it, and our Board of Health is actively on it. She's also working to secure booster shots as they become available, and whatever the rollout protocol is for that, she is working to secure that. And she has several hundred doses, I believe, of vaccine coming, and she also is getting ready for a flu vaccine clinic, which is important this year. Because, again, they're looking at trying to delineate between the flu and COVID, and if you have COVID, are you going to get a worse case of the flu, or if you have the flu, are you going to get a worse case of COVID? So we will be getting flu vaccines and doing our regular flu vaccine clinic very soon, and we'll keep the public up to date on that. On a couple of positive notes, I put out a press release today that Mrs. Berkowitz, our infamous sock lady, and if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting her, one of the just loveliest ladies I think I've ever had the pleasure of crossing paths with ever. Mrs. Berkowitz believes that nobody in this town should ever have their feet cold. And it started because, as I understand it, she told me the story that she saw a gentleman on a sleety March cold day have to pick up his child because the child was crying because he had no socks and his feet were wet and cold. And at that moment, she decided no child in Stoughton, a town that had been so good to her, should ever go without socks, and she became the sock lady. And the donations used to go to the senior center, Council on Aging. But with COVID, that really became logistically difficult, and we would deliver the socks to churches and whatnot. And she asked if we could, even though it's a bit unusual, set up a fund where people could just send donations, and we as a town will be responsible for purchasing socks and delivering them to local agencies. And we were happy to comply with Mrs. Berkowitz's request. It's unusual, and we don't normally set up something like that, but the spirit of this is just so kind and so good. In a sometimes otherwise not so kind and good world, it is really hard not to do that. So anybody who is interested can donate to the Gladys Berkowitz Sock Donation Fund. And they can make those checks out to that. They would come to Town Hall and they go directly into an account. Bill Rowe will be monitoring those, so there will not be any, it's not cash, it's all monitored and controlled, and it will be accounted for. So I just wanted to give an update on that.
Put that on the website?
That's on my Facebook page, and it will go on the website. We put out a public press release as well. She's just a great lady. One other thing, a couple other things actually. You have in front of you tonight a binder. Part of it wasn't. It was a portion of my goals that were outlined for me, but it was also a directive of the board for budget season to put a focus on HR and job descriptions and evaluations and all things HR. And what you have is what was produced so far by my Human Resources Task Force. This is a group of people, including actually the Assistant Fire Chief who's on there. This is a group of people who volunteered above and beyond their duties, led, of course, by Deanna in personnel, to work with me on producing the things that we need to produce to tighten down our HR protocols and processes in this town. So we have gotten pretty much all the director job descriptions and assistant director job descriptions are completed. We're working on all the job descriptions townwide. That's still a work in progress. There is an evaluation tool that has been reviewed and approved by this group, and then I have to impact bargain that with the unions. You will also see that we're beginning to work on a very important thing, which is social media policy. The only cost to the town for all of this work at this point has actually been just some legal review on the social media policy. There may be a few other things that we have to bring legal counsel in on, but I really want to thank this group. They've been tremendous, and I'm so appreciative that this has been done within our budget at no extra cost. And it's really part of a process to tighten down something that has not been in town historically tightened down. This goes with, again, we talk about advertising and how we're going to advertise and what our job descriptions will look like and what our qualifications are and standardizing all of that. So everybody on the board has a hard copy of it, and I wanted to leave that for you tonight. I also know that part of the goals and standards were capital and 3 to 5 year budget outlook. You have a preliminary 3-year budget outlook in the shared drive, and I also have emailed to you a preliminary capital project outlook. I think that's important because tonight we're going to be looking at some of the fire station models. We will present on those then likely October 5th. I'll give you full presentation on that as we head into budget season. And that will also be before town meeting, fall town meeting, so people have a sense of where we're at with capital. And a couple other things quickly, local receipts for 21. Remember, that was the height of the COVID year. We are coming in approximately $1 million ahead of budget. That's absolutely great news because when we plan next year's budget, we have to actually balance on last year's total receipts. We can't do it on 22 because it won't be reconciled. So we were very concerned about 23's local receipts and how we were going to budget to reflect what would likely happen versus it had 21 been as bad as we thought it might have been. We would only been able to budget on 95% of that much lower number. Now we're actually going to be able to budget on 95% of something that's $1 million higher than we anticipated. That's excellent news, and that's a credit, by the way, that this town was able to do that through COVID. Some of it's restaurant and meals taxes, but a good portion of that is coming from things like licensing, permit fees. We did not lose one day of business during COVID. We alternated shifts, we had appointments, we had people dropping things off in vestibules and picking them up and working online and working through computers. But I have to thank our whole team, tax collections, building inspections, everybody that worked on this. And on the flip side, even the restaurant and meals, Pierre McCarthy's efforts to do the CDBG money to help keep small businesses going. Well, a lot of those small businesses are part of our restaurant revenue. So it was a collective effort, but that's really good news coming in on the 21 revenues. They're just being finalized, and Bill Rowe will be presenting all of this in detail to you, but I wanted you to be aware of that. And another little piece of good news, I just got some numbers from our golf course for the first 2 months of the fiscal year. July of this year outperformed last July by $31,000. So last July was tremendous. This July outperformed. We brought in $73,000 in July, and that was with a rainy 4th of July weekend. August, we were up about $5,000 from last year. We're at $64,000 this year. The concessionaire is doing well. We get percentages when they run events. We also get some rent from them. It's not a high rent, but we get rent and utilities from them through the winter as well to offset utility costs. So basically, we are trending for the first 2 months at a 17% increase over last year on the golf course. So thanks to Victor, and when I thanked Victor this morning in our staff meeting, he passed along thank yous to every department in town because he also agrees that collectively, recreation, police, fire, everybody, DPW has been helping out over there. So it has been a huge collective team effort. But I wanted to pass that along too. So good news tonight.
I thank you very much for all of that. But I really just want to say that you and your team have turned that golf course around. It looks like it's turning into what everybody hoped it could be. And I just can't thank you enough. I can't wait for town meeting to hear. I think they're going to be pretty happy.
Thank you. And I have to say, it's thanks to the public for trusting us. I mean, one of the things when I came on board was there was a lot of mistrust over the golf course and the future of the golf course. And town meeting really entrusted us with a lot of money. I mean, we had a par five that was several $100,000. We bought equipment. We bought another $200,000 last year. And I know it's been controversial. So I think for me, you hit on something that for me, I feel like we've honored the public trust on this, and that's really important. I mean, we asked for a lot, and town meeting gave it to us and trusted us. And so now my next thing is I'm putting together the capital budget, is looking at some of the smaller purchases that we normally purchase out of our general capital, and seeing if they're less than 50,000, they really do not have to go on a warrant for budgeting. And they may be things that might be able to come right out of that enterprise fund's revenues.
I was next. I was next.
Hold on, so Deborah's been waiting, so.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Mr. Carrera. I kind of elbowed him to say I was next. Thank you, Dr. Grimm. My comments are regarding the 3 to 5 year, the multi-year capital project plan. That what you provided us, and I know you said you're going to take a deep dive and provide a final version maybe around October 5th timeframe. But I did want to make sure that we were on the same page regarding this 3 to 5 year capital plan. You know, I was looking for something that is really a deep dive, something that you tease out and help us to understand and be ready at that third year or at that 5th year. And I was also looking for projects that the school are planning. So, because that is a capital project plan in detail. Also, I wanted to add on about the armory. So there was no mention on the armory. So I'm just throwing these things out as in no particular order, but I was hoping that you would include that on your capital project plan as well. What is the outlook? What are we going to do? We acquired it 20 years ago for $1, but what happens if we don't use it? If we don't use it for the purpose or the intent? So what happens? So that's it. I just wanted to see if we would be on the same page with what is a deep dive capital project plan.
Yeah, and the schools are a little more challenging with capital. Again, they're doing a feasibility study to look at the future for the elementary school projects and the middle school. So it's a little harder for me to roll that in right now until that feasibility study happens. And as far as capital, they haven't done a lot of capital purchase. They have a lot of things that are at 50,000 because it might be 50,000 in one school, 50,000 in another. So it really doesn't rise above the radar for capital. I will reach out again and see if there's anything in particular that they would want me to include on this list.
Okay.
And I'll take a little look at the Army. The train station I did not include because we're going out now on an RFP for a public-private partnership possibility.
And do we have any more information what we're getting for the infrastructure bill? So with that capital project plan, it not only does it include cost to the town, but revenue, funding source, and
right now
infrastructure bill would be a great funding source.
So that infrastructure money right now is, you know, some of it got voted to go toward the Park Street sewer borrowing, and I have to look if that's in those numbers or if my debt running, we have, because I also included separately because of the fire station, some running debt models in there. I have to look at the Park Street sewer and see if that's been reduced proportionally for the $950,000 that we added from CARES. But the ARPA money right now is based on lost revenue, and depending on what that amount is that we have coming in from Norfolk County that came down through the feds, a good portion of that may likely come off that fire station proposal, and that would directly benefit the taxpayers, whether it's in the operating budget or if it's an override. So we're looking at that money closely for that purpose. That's because there's a public health component, there's a good shot that we will not get resistance on using it for that. We have to be really careful. There's not a lot of clear guidance from the feds, which is not unusual. There's pages and pages and pages of bureaucracy on what we need to fill out, but not a whole lot of guidance on, yes, this complies, no, it doesn't. And very hard for Sue Herman to get a very simple answer like, does this conform to the guidelines? Which should be a pretty simple answer. But again, it's a lot of federal bureaucracy we're dealing with. But we are keeping an eye on that infrastructure money, yes.
And one more thing about in that regard, I am prepared, once you give your 3 to 5 year capital project plan, I'm prepared to make a motion that no other capital item expenditures are approved unless it's on the capital project plan. So I just wanted you to know that that was coming down the pike too. No surprises, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, we gotta move, what do you got, real fast? Because we're about an hour overdue right now. You have one too?
I have several.
I'll just do one quick, Lou.
All right, well, all right.
I just want to say that I know Dr. Grimm gave some accolades out, but I think we got to thank the Finance Committee that put the budget together for the annual town meeting for Cedar Hill, that they voted one thing, straight cash for Victor down there at Cedar Hill, which was a huge thing, so that it took me a little bit to sell it to him. But it was a smart thing to do so that he could succeed. And we put some money, as you said, into it, the Par 5, 500,000. It only made sense to let him continue on and see how he could make it. And then now we know results are coming. So I want to say thank you to the members that are still on that board.
Mr. Gito, are these items as a follow-up to these questions here
Yes.
that you have? Okay. All right, just asking.
Earlier on, you indicated that you're either going to open or close the warrant on the 21st, or when is the warrant going to close?
The warrant will open in order to make a November 8th town meeting. The warrant will open September 14th. I believe we're probably going to simply do a virtual meeting for the opening because it's literally a gavel bang and a vote. And then September 21st, it will close. It has
Thank
to
you.
stay open.
The second item, we had talked about the veterans agent position a few weeks ago, and it's the board that's going to make a decision on the veterans agent, I believe, because under the town charter, the veterans agent is.
It is.
No, it's my appointment with your advice and consent.
No.
I-
No.
We'll have to agree. I would,
I-
let's
I-
look at it. I just happened to read it the other day, and from what I remember, I would,
You're absolutely right. Well,
Yeah.
let us assume
we'll
in a few.
look at it, but let's let Mr. Gito finish, because I want to get us moving. We got people that are waiting for us.
I think we need to see the announcement and all of the other things that would ordinarily come through the board. And that would include the announcement, the process. I mean, the winnowing process that Ms. Roberts had sort of generally talked about. I have no particular problem with, but I want to see that. So just make sure that we get that. I wanted to also clarify something that I said a couple weeks ago, and that is that when I talked about the fire department and the police department going out on events that may be domestic problems or others where the person that may be causing the issue is either drug impaired or mentally has a mental problem, that I'm hoping that we will see a plan not to deal retrospectively after the event occurs, but when that event occurs, that we have people who are trained to be able to intervene and do that in a way to de-escalate issues. That was the intent of what my discussion was, and I just wanted to be clear on that, because when you and I had a discussion a couple days ago, I got a different impression as to what you thought I had said, and I'm not debating that. I'm just saying what my message was. And none of that is a bad thing. A couple of issues that you touched on, I think also need to be thought about in terms of a new initiative in the budget. The thing about the zoning, how are we going to take the zoning violations and work our way into having a court or some other mechanism for doing that? I mean, I think that that's important. I think it's a great idea, and I think it needs to be built into a budget. So when you look at the other things that we're talking about, maybe making some changes in how we do business, what things we might want to provide to the town, that you include that. In terms of the COVID situation, I don't know where we're heading in terms of having masks again in the town hall to protect our people, to protect the public. So I'm not asking you to answer the question right now, but I don't think we can get too far away from where the rest of the world is, at least the rest of the world in our part of the world. And the last piece is the school costs. Now, we don't know exactly what the school costs are going to be, but we know that they're going to be significant because it's either going to be one school or possibly combining two schools together to create a different environment where in the long run the school costs are lower because of cutting down on the number of facilities. So I don't think it would be, I think that we can't hide behind the fact that we don't know exactly what the numbers are. We ought to be plugging something in that the school thinks is there and make adjustments to that later. We can't just let it be flopping around or not even being included. That's the end of my story.
Okay, with that, thank you, Mr. Gito. Let's move on to our 7:20 p.m. appointment for fire station building financing. And that is Dr. Grimm.
Yep,
I
so-
believe the chiefs should be up here.
Yep, if the chiefs would like to
If the
come up.
chiefs would come forward.
They are available to answer any questions. So the other night, or back in August, I presented to you an option that involved the rehabilitation of Freeman Street and a fire operations building over potentially on Prospect, which turned out to be the parcel that was recommended by the selection board who looked at the RFP. We continue to flesh that project out. There are some costs to it to ensure that it will be good enough and built out enough to last 50 years. We do not want to be in a situation where we are moving in and there's no room for growth, but on the other hand, we don't want to have nice-to-haves that we don't need to have. What we need to have is something that we can grow into comfortably, that the fire chief and the assistant chief believe will serve the future of the town based on what we see happening. For example, our statistics are showing that our demographic over 60, I believe, is growing dramatically. Placement of ambulances is critical. Right now, our only ambulances sit at Freeman Street. They don't even sit over on Central, which is a great location if we have an ambulance on the other side of town. This plan actually optimizes ambulance services, while providing us a really solid municipal headquarter building that will serve in multiple capacities for the town, and frankly, restore a building that is sitting there that's going to be another blight in town, that even if we sold, would not bring back enough revenue to warrant doing that. It just isn't worth getting rid of that building. Plus, there's a historic context to that building, and we would be able to preserve that. So we gave that presentation a few weeks back, and Deb, do you have it? Okay. Great.
Madam Town Manager, before we get started, I just want to make a note. This is the first with our new chief here testifying
Yes.
before the board. and the assistant
Officially,
chief.
yes.
Thank you. And we got them off to a great Stoughton start and held them up for an hour. That was beautiful.
Yeah, that's
right? So,
beautiful.
welcome. That's your inauguration right there.
We're used to Stoughton, we know.
Yeah, they know. And I have to say, I want to thank our whole team that we have working on this, the staff team, but particularly in this case, the chiefs, because now it's a numbers thing, and now I'm asking them where we can save money, but how we can do it in such a way that it's not going to negatively impact operations, and is this way we're going the right way for the future of the town? And the chiefs have worked very carefully to keep the costs minimal while keeping the service and the future of the town in the forefront. Next slide, Deb. So cost-wise, some comparison, because again, tonight is about money, not so much about operations, but they can't be completely mutually exclusive. We had looked originally at a one-station headquarters combined. So we were going to move headquarters out of Central Street so that we could better have an ambulance over there. We need to grow over there, and we need an ambulance over there. That was going to require a larger parcel of land than what we currently are going to be using. It was significantly increased on the new construction costs because it was several thousand more square feet of new construction. There was no consideration for public health or any kind of joint operation and efficiency. And one of the things that was interesting that the chief and the assistant chief brought out was that right now when they do training at a headquarters building, everybody has to bring the apparatus to that building, which means it's on one side of town. Or right now it's on Freeman Street, but if it's on Central Street, if they're doing training, that means that all the apparatus is over there and there's really nothing covering that side of town. With a centralized version like Freeman Street, operationally what we do is they will run their training, because this will also be a training center, right in the center of town, so that if there is a call during training, our apparatus is actually centrally located instead of for response time shifting across town. So just sort of an added benefit. Those costs were going to be approximately $31 million, and that's sort of I think that was pretty much a very conservative number on what we thought it would be. It would be approximately $31 million for that. Next slide, Deb. Our cost projections for this project. The current design being discussed incorporates the model presented on August 3rd with some modifications for savings and efficiency. An operational firehouse at a prime location with the scope to support future growth. I think that that's critical. Our primary concern here is getting our rescue services and ambulance service and fire services to the people who need it. This serves that. Secondly, the rehab of Freeman Street to house headquarters at a location central to both stations and the placement of an ambulance at Central Street. That was the original plan for that building. We're now optimizing that building. Providing optimal ambulance coverage townwide, creation of an emergency management center easily accessible to all town departments involved in a large-scale crisis. So our fire chief serves as our EMA director, but the reality is in an emergency management crisis, I would be there, the DPW director would likely be there if it's a flood situation or a hurricane situation or a storm situation. It could be a public health crisis, as we all know. Janice would be there. The police chief and deputy chief would be there. So having it centralized to operations of town hall is extraordinarily efficient. And then the development of a small public health center to accommodate future vaccine locations, future testing locations, if there's some public health crisis, and let's say it wasn't a contagious pandemic, but we wanted to have an area where we could brief the public on a public health situation, we could do that at this location. Rehabbing Freeman Street to office space is far less expensive than rehabbing Freeman Street if we were going to make it a station again, because a lot of people had talked about that. Why don't you just rehab it and make it a station? It's far more expensive to renovate, to make it come up to standards for fire operations. Fire operations are expensive. The ventilation, the hazmat, the maintenance base, all of those things, and the structure required for it is far more expensive than what it's going to take to rehab that for office space. And again, it allows a very centralized municipal town function where we also will have fire prevention. And important in that is that fire prevention is a very public portion of our fire department. And what we have is people who come in, let's say, for permitting or for whatever it is they need to check, they now have a one-stop shopping. They can come here if they have permitting at Town Hall, they go over to Freeman Street. So again, all the things that we talked about. So what we're going to get, and it comes in at a cost of approximately $27.3 million, a little higher than my original number, but again, our materials costs are sort of all over the board right now. And we're trying to go conservative in the sense of going with higher numbers, so that we can only be pleasantly surprised on the numbers as opposed to say, we're in trouble. So 27.3, and that is inclusive of the land purchased and any contingencies. So that includes all building contingencies at this point. And we're anticipating at least $3 million off of that cost in grant funding. It may be more than that through the infrastructure money, Vice Chair Roberts, that, for instance, you referenced. There may be some CPC money for the facade on Freeman Street. If we, our goal is to restore that back to the historic look that it had with the original doors. That would sort of be something we would look to CPC, particularly given that it's a downtown historic building. And we would like to keep that feel. If we're going to have that as a municipal building, it would be great to have the feel of that. It would have ample parking. There's parking across the street at Randolph Savings. It would also provide evening parking downtown that people would be able to use. It would always be municipal parking that's available for the public. So those are the cost projections. What we're really here tonight is for me to present you a couple of financing options. So the first one, Deb, if you could click. So I asked Sue to work with Cinder on coming up with some assumptions to consider how we would do the financing. The general assumptions we used were 30-year borrowing. Now, normally we would go with a 20-year borrowing because you never want to pay more interest than you have to, just like when you do a mortgage on your house and you refinance. But Cinder is recommending right now that we do 30-year, and Vice Chair Roberts, you heard that discussion with her. Interest rates are so low right now that they are actually recommending that we go that route because there's less of an immediate burden and the interest is so low it's actually beneficial at this point. So we ran our models based on 30 years. We were originally going to run them on 3.5%. Cinder actually recommended no, 3%. I have Sue Herman, who is more conservative than anybody. So Sue was like 3.5. I think Sue would have had it at 5% probably if she could have. Cinder recommended 3, and again, we will take the recommendation of bond counsel on that. And the sooner we actually do this, the more likely we are to get even lower. Right now, I believe municipal bonds,
less than 2%.
Less than 1.9%, I think, are municipal. So if we were to go out relatively soon, but things are so unstable right now nationally, it's hard to know. But we could come in at 2.25, 2.5, 2%. Then we really have a huge savings, measurable. And then we base the borrowing on $28 million. We have since recalculated. It's down to 27.3. The numbers that I'm going to present to you tonight are still based on that 28. So whatever I present to you today will be tweaked down a small amount. But that's everything. Everything. And so 28 million, less than 3 for grants. We still think we may get even more than that. So we're really looking at 27.3 minus 3 puts us at about 24.3. And my gut is we may even be able to finance another $1 million or so on it with ARPA money. But again, we're going with worst case scenario. Financing option number 1. This would be if we did no debt exclusion and we fully funded it through the operating budget. It would add approximately $1.275 million to our overall operating budget that we would have to find. Remember, that's a joint cost. So the benefit is there's no override for the public. So there's no direct impact on their annual taxes. The challenge is there may have to be some reduction in services for the municipality and the schools jointly to have to absorb 1.25 or 1.3 additional is going to be a challenge for both the schools and the municipality. But it is an option that I think the board absolutely needs to have in front of you. Yep, 1.275. Option 2 goes the complete different direction. If you did a 100% debt exclusion, that was on an average home price, which is prior to our reval, it's about $450,000 is the average right now. That would come out to about $28.50 per quarter, or about $113 annually. The benefits, there's no negative impact on the town operating budget, and we actually earn interest. The more we borrow up front like that, we gain interest. That happened with the schools. There was some interest that came. In fact, that fell off this year, and we really noticed the difference on our interest revenue. But interest numbers are so low that, again, I'm not considering that a huge benefit. The challenge is the reval is going to shift higher to residential this year, so we know that home values will go up. So if you did 100% on the taxpayer, that's there's going to be a bit of a an increase. And we really were trying, my goal was to try to come up with something that would come out to about less than $20 to $25 a quarter, because we tried to think about what can people realistically afford and what can the town absorb. Option 3 sort of hits that. So option 3 is if we took 35% of it on the operating budget, and that would require us to find about an extra $447,000 in our budget, and that's going to require us all to tighten our belts a bit, but that's okay. And so 447,000, but I do believe with what we're seeing for potential growth coming up townwide, we have, we're going out for an RFP right now for ambulance services, for example. Our ambulance revenues, which go into our stabilization fund for fire equipment, but still ultimately there's a cost to us, it comes on our revenue numbers. We are likely to see a large increase on that because of the work that the chief has been putting into, let's say, a new a billing program. So there are areas that we should see some revenue that I really believe that combined off the total budget, when you're looking at a $100 million budget, if you look at it collectively, we should be able to find $450,000. And then 65% exclusion, and again, now we're talking about the highest numbers. That comes out right now to about $19.12 quarterly, or $76.50 annually, again, based on a $450,000 home. So for some people a little more, some people a little less. The benefits of this are the funding of increased debt may require some small cuts to operating budget, but given the anticipated growth should be manageable without any noticeable change in service. Second, the challenge is it's just under 20 a quarter. The reval is likely to impact. The cost per thousand on that right now is approximately 17 cents per thousand. So people who look at their taxes as a per thousand number, it's about 17 cents per thousand. I just put recommendations and final thoughts. And again, this is really a board decision. Collectively, you represent the residents and you know what truly is in the broader best interest. From my perspective, where I said option 3 is likely to have the least overall impact on the taxpayers if you consider financial and services as impact. If you're looking straight financial, then, you know, option 1 was what you would do if you didn't want to have any burden on them. But there's going to be some impact somewhere. That $1,275,000 doesn't just come out of nowhere without some potential impact. So option 3 sort of balances it. And again, our numbers are reflecting the highest expenses. We are hearing now that material costs are stabilizing, if not looking to drop in the next couple months. If we can sort of hit that sweet spot of these material costs stabilizing and dropping and interest rates not skyrocketing yet before inflation hits those, then we might actually be able to drop that 27.3 a decent amount. Again, no consideration for CPC potential at this point in that $3 million that I discussed. Likely we may ask for a few $100,000 on facade work, for example. And then the possibility of the lower interest rate than even the 3%, which would drop this somewhat as well. I defer to the chiefs if they have anything they would like to add before we have questions.
No, sorry. This is so bad. This is the first time I used the mic. Just clarifying, I believe the ambulance billing receipts go into the general account, then they siphon out what they want to stabilize the ambulance. So, you know, we're looking, we brought in 1.8 million last year. We're looking to increase that, kind of streamline our billing. So anything we can do on our side to assist with that, I'm hoping that the bettering of our ISO rating is going to start affecting the public and their homeowners insurance. You know, the ISO had suggested maybe around August or into September, people start looking at that as possibly a decrease in the homeowners insurance. So there's things we're trying to do on our end to offset, and we understand the burden, but at the same time, we've understood for a long time the need. So we're trying to balance that all out.
And I think to the chief's point about the insurance, if we are looking at something that's about $76 or let's call it $80 a year, if on their insurance there's a $20 savings even a year, that's, you know, now we've got 25% of that cost eaten up there in a way. And again, more productive ambulance services and revenue coming from that. So.
Okay, we'll stop at any questions? From right to left, Scott?
The only question I have is, probably through you to the town manager, to the two chiefs, is, are you guys going to have some kind of sit-down with the residents that are in that area? Because I've already gotten the calls, because some of them know it's coming, others thought it was going to go the other way up the hill, and I already heard from them. But I just think it would be easy if you guys can explain it to them why it's going to be in their neighborhood, why it's going to be there. I had to explain to a couple of people when I finally got the answers from you gentlemen, why we couldn't use the armory. I didn't realize the rooms that had to be special, and it, made things more updated and stuff. I just think the residents need to hear why it's best for them.
And so, Mr. Kerr, I absolutely agree with you. As a matter of fact, in one of our meetings, I'm all about getting out and either whether they come to the station, we go to them. It's important that they understand.
I'd like to see maybe if we could do something someplace like
I would.
here or whatever, something safe, or
Yeah, I think that a lot of people might have a little bit of a fear or misunderstanding what it means to have a firehouse in their neighborhood. I'm a little bit old school. I mean, I know the neighborhood around Freeman Street. When we have good neighbors in there, they love coming by the station. They love knowing the guys, the people that work there, the men and women. We end up fixing kids' bikes. We do things that we really try to get involved with the community, especially when the firehouse is right in the neighborhood, let's say. I also had pointed out in one of the committee meetings that a lot of times when you are looking to get insurance on your home, they look to see how close your firehouse is. And if it's within a mile, it's actually important when they start looking at the numbers. And that's why it's also important, for us to be right there. We want to be looked at as a benefit moving into that neighborhood, to be part of that neighborhood. If anything happens medically, any type of emergency situation, we're right there. As even part of it, talking to the Easton chief and even the Brockton chief, where they're Brockton station right on the high school campus per se, and Easton is built right on 4th Street. You know how many times kids are driven by not feeling good, coming out of high school, whatever. Parents walk by with their kids, they're playing baseball right across the street. The fire station's right there. They just take a walk over. We want to help the community. So we'd be more than happy to sit down in the public and really deal and answer any questions that they have.
I think what's important is that, right now we're looking at the financing so we can get it on a warrant, but in that time before November 8th, there will absolutely be huge public outreach on this. We'll do the Zoom meetings. I'm going to be doing the Zoom meetings for November's meeting anyway on all articles, but this particular absolutely needs to have town hall type meetings. No question. It's too big of a project, and the public is so committed and dedicated. So many people have expressed support, but have every right to hear and ask questions.
yeah,
Absolutely.
some people understand what you've just described, and others are like in fear, like they think all of a sudden the street's going to become like this busy street of New York and stuff. But
Yeah. No, we're going to try to take precautions. We understand we're going on to Prospect Street and then on to Park. You all understand that corner. Understand? I mean, you especially. And so that's all taken into consideration. And any conversation that the public has, especially around that neighborhood, we're more than happy to, answer those questions.
thank you.
Mr. Cavey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a couple questions. The idea of moving quickly and taking advantage of low interest rates is very appealing to me. You kind of have to strike when the iron's hot. You just have to make it happen. Now with the options that you provided, a debt exclusion is not it cannot be done quickly. Right? That has to go to town meeting, has to go to a public vote. We might be talking about this ultimately being sometime next year. And I was wondering, it looks like you may have already given some thought to this. How do we make this move quickly?
So we actually would look, once the town meeting is closed and certified, and actually, if we do November 8th, we should be able, before Thanksgiving or late November, the clerk will have all that stuff up to the AG, and we should have everything closed and sealed. We would literally have to run a special election for this. I would envision that we would have to pull something together very quickly, and by early February, get the vote. And work with the clerk's office to ensure that we can get an election set up. We're a small enough town that we should be able to pull that off very quickly. And this is such a public event, if you will, that we will be able to get out the vote and get people to really be able to step in and voice their views and cast their ballot on it. So I would look at late January or February, I think is what we've talked about time frame in our meeting.
Yes, Dr. Grimm, and my education is in economics and finance, so I can appreciate what you're saying, and bond rates are at a historic low, and I think that we should absolutely strike, as you say, while the iron is hot. And to dovetail what Mr. Carrara said, the chief and I absolutely would be happy to host several open houses to where residents could come in and talk and bring their concerns to us, and we could actually speak to them and let them know what a benefit it would be to have us in their neighborhood and close facility to emergency response routes.
Yeah, with an interest rate below inflation, I mean, ultimately, they're paying us to borrow money.
Agreed,
agreed. Yeah.
agreed.
So it really, there is no better time to do this. The other question I had, which is it might not be possible, but I just put it out there. I know that even if it was, in the worst case scenario, 100% debt exclusion, the total amount per average household is not exorbitant. But there are still people who will find that challenging to pay. And so my question is, I feel like there's enough passion about this project that there would be some people who would be willing to pay more to offset those who might not be able to afford debt exclusion. Does any mechanism exist to actually make that something like that work, where you can perhaps pledge additional towards a specific project, and then we would also sort of be able to offset perhaps people on fixed incomes or something like that, seniors, people over 80 or whatever it might be, to be able to provide additional assistance for people who might have a challenge paying additional taxes.
It's a great question. I don't know what the legalities of it are, but whether or not we could put a, let's say, a senior citizen, like we have the senior citizens, real estate, you could put a senior citizen rate and maybe offset a little of that burden to to everybody else. The sliding scale based on the value of your home sort of, spreads it out a little bit, or sort of spreads that wealth out a little bit, or that cost.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to put something in where seniors would maybe pay a little less, I don't know legally how that works with the debt with an exclusion, but I can certainly poke around and find out.
Yeah,
Do a GoFundMe page.
yeah. I mean,
GoFundMe for a
Might be
fire
a little
station.
bit
You'd
of
probably
that.
get some donations.
I just from what I've seen, I mean, I think it was like $130 a year annually or something along those
It's
lines.
113 for an average house, at
113.
full exclusion.
Yeah, and I just feel like there are a number of people who would be willing to, and that's a full debt exclusion. I think even with that, I think there'd be people willing to make sure that this project went through. I mean, it's so long overdue, and for such an extraordinarily important department in our town, serving critical missions, and there might be other departments where people have a lot of gripes, but nobody's ever going to say they don't like somebody who's going to save them.
This is justified, though.
Yeah, no one's ever going to say that they're not into fire departments too much. The rescue missions, also the firefighting, ambulance missions, all of those things. When you need them, and I think everyone's so grateful to have those services available. And our town does it really well. And I think that I think there's enough people. And maybe my faith in humanity's a bit, maybe I believe too hard. But at the same time, I think there's enough people that would be able to offset that. But I just don't know what the rules are. So thank you. Those are my only questions.
Ms. Roberts.
Yes, Dr. Grimm and everyone, thank you so much for this great presentation. And I was really happy to hear the three options, and I understood it completely. But I do have a couple of questions, just because I want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly and I've done my due diligence. So, no doubt, bond rates are at historical lows. Are we talking about 2022 budget dollars to fund this? I'm unsure about that, so before I go on, I want to make sure. 2022.
We would likely start to fund this in '23.
In 23, so we're talking about 20.
Where are we?
budget.
We're in 22 now.
Okay.
So if we were to able to do this in a timely fashion, we would have to look at, I believe, it being incorporated into the '23 budget.
23 budget, okay. And I'm perfectly clear of how bonds rotate. Some go mature, and they go off, and we put on new bonds, right? So when you talked about the $1.27 million, you're saying we don't have a bond that is, or multiple bonds that are maturing that will cover that cost. Is that correct?
Yes. If you look, I put some backup document later this afternoon that will help you going forward on this to answer that has Cinder's breakdowns of what debt will be falling off each year and what debt would be coming on. Much of what falls off actually ends up coming back on our regular 5-year capital. This is why we need the 5-year plan.
Right.
But if you look at what I presented you for '23, I think I had it in the fire later this evening, but I think it came out to about $1 million of new capital projects in '23. We usually have $1 to $2 million sort of falling off on the borrowing, but it's not going to come off as a straight dollar for dollar million off. But, it may in some of those years be a little less than 1.2 million, but effectively, it's because that capital borrowing that we do for routine infrastructure purchases, and sometimes there's going to need to be more. In '27, for example, we have an engine we need to purchase, $1.2 million fire engine we're going to need to purchase. So while some years there may be a little more coming off than what we're borrowing, in other years that's not going to be the case. So I wouldn't rely on that as a way to say, okay, well, we're going to lose about $600,000 next year, so it's really only going to be $600,000. It will fluctuate. But you have some, she amortized that out a bit in some of those documents. They were too complicated to kind of put on a slide, but those documents are available, and if the public was interested in those runs, we also would provide those.
Okay, and so then the leading to the final question, we always talk about, well, we can't do this because our services would be impacted. But and I know you do, but I have to ask the question, that's my due diligence. What services and what dollar amount is going to fall short that's going to equal that $1.275 million because of if we're trying to cover the monthly cost, not the total cost of a fire station budget, but just the monthly cost, the bond payment for the fire station. So how do you?
I kind of have to look at it globally. So when we're doing the budget document and we look at what has to go into joint costs right off the top, we look at what we're going to do for healthcare costs. We look at our retirement costs, which is sort of fixed. And then we look at debt service. And we have a debt service line item approximately, let's say, $3 million. If that's in there and it has to be 4 point whatever million, that is a direct 1 million and 1.3 million that we don't have to work with throughout the rest of the budget. And I say we, it's collectively the schools and the municipality, and what I don't want to have happen is any kind of war related to that. But the reality is whether the schools have to find 65% and I have to find 35%, I don't like the split. It does nothing but create controversy. But the reality is, collectively as a town, we will have to find that 1.2 somewhere else. I don't have a lot of extra money in my budget. You all know we've trimmed it way back. We've been able to still have free cash, but I want to make clear one of the reasons we have good free cash last year is that we had emergency spending only and necessary hiring only, absolute necessary because of COVID. So our free cash isn't necessarily going to be reflective of a regular operational year. Additionally, for bond rating purposes and FinCom, we are allowed to use less and less free cash to balance our budget anyway. So I have less free cash for the budget, a couple $100,000 every year. Now you're going to add 1.2, let's say, in debt. So I'm now working off about 1.5 or 1.6 million less to create a budget. We know that's a challenge. If I had that much extra, we wouldn't have even had a gap with the schools last year, because I think we had like 300,000 initially, or 400,000. So there is a challenge. Our labor costs are under control, but they do increase. We were able to have the budget go up at about, I think, in the end, it was about 1.4 or 1.5 just on the municipal side alone. But there's still going to be that increase. And that was with really not increasing services. We barely maintained to do that. If I have to find another several $100,000, 6, 7, 800,000, just on the municipal side, something's got to give somewhere. And there are just financial places I can't create structural deficits to do it. I can't underfund things that I know are going to have to be funded. I can't use free cash more than what we're allowed to, and frankly, I don't want to. And to be honest, I'm at a point right now where there are things I want to add to the operating budget, not take away, like small capital items that we use free cash after the fact, or we put $5,000 items on there that don't belong there, that we really should be funding out of or lake management's the perfect example of an article that's $35,000 a year that goes to town meeting every year. It doesn't belong there. It belongs in the operating budget. But if I want to do those things that are truly fiscally prudent and the way they should be done, there's absolutely no way I can start, and that's going to take years to do that. That's not going to happen in one budget cycle either. But there's absolutely no way I can do that. I can tell you, just because I know what the numbers are and I know where it's tight and I know where we have wiggle room. And I can't do a budget based on, well, we probably won't be fully staffed on firefighters, so I know I'll have some money at the end of the year, so I can count that, and just like float it. I can't do that. So that's part of the problem. Something has to give, and I'm going to have to find where that gives, and whether that's not hiring, whether that's leaving positions vacant. And I have to tell you, there's not much more I can trim on the town hall side. And it's typically staff is where the money is to make up for something like that. The only way to make up 6, 7, 800,000 is to either short the healthcare fund, which Sue Herman will kill me because she thinks I've done that anyway the past year, and we will have to start shoring that up. We can't wiggle on the retirement. Our big drivers, I don't have any wiggle room. So the next place is staff. And that's the last thing I want to do at this point, because I've already, with consolidation and restructuring, reduced the number of town hall staff. So that's the challenge.
Yeah, that is very challenging, Dr. Grimm, and we still have the Proposition 2.5, which is the levy increases, 2.5 plus the new growth every year. So do you have any idea, when you're thinking about our annual budget now, how much of that, what percentage of that is our debt service? Because this year it's like around 3.3% or something like that. But typically our debt service and our practice is 4%. So can you give me some idea where we are now in relation, so I can put all of my variables together?
It's far too early at this point to have a sense of what we'll be looking at in about 2 months or 3 months. But what I can tell you is, yes, the town has projects on the horizon. Our local receipts look okay. Our costs are probably going to be relatively stable. Our labor contracts are under control and certainly within control. But that being said, I mean, ideally, would we like a 4% on our debt? Ideally, I would love to have $4 million in there. But that right now at we're approximately 3.3 million. That 3% is about 3.3 million, or about $100 million budget.
Right.
So if we added that 450,000 on a 35, we're actually almost at that 4%. Much higher than that, if you added that 1.2 as a straight number onto that, you'd be looking at more like 4.8% on debt service. That would strap us a bit.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Gito?
I guess I'm having a little bit of a problem here with the numbers, because we had a discussion at the last town meeting about sort of underfunding infrastructure in roadways, roadway maintenance. I hear that costs for supplies and things like that are going up. And I don't know if that's true. Other people might say, no, that's not true, but I think it is.
Right now, they've flattened out, Lou, and some things are coming back. The only thing we're finding out now is there's a shortage.
Okay.
So everything's stifled, so
Thank you.
I don't know what's worse than the other.
The other thing is that we still have to deal with the school issues in a couple years. And if we can't afford $1 million in reducing the operating budget now, what are we going to do a couple of years from now? I mean, it seems like we're trying to paint ourselves into a corner, when in fact we've got two major projects that need to be funded, that the town, I think, as was said before, thinks the fire department is a wonderful thing. I mean, they've always thought it was a wonderful thing. And the schools need funding as well. And we need to do the things that we need to do in terms of our operating budget, because we're fighting tooth and nail to just keep afloat. I don't think that we have a booming budget in the town. And to propose cutting the budget with all of those things seems to make no sense to me. It makes no sense to me in terms of talking to the people in the town who perhaps don't understand to the level that you do, for sure. And perhaps some people on this board who understand things a lot better than I do, to tell them, oh, it's okay. We don't have any real problem in the town with our operating budget. We'll be just fine. We won't pay for these things. You aren't going to have to do as much as you might under another scenario. I think that people need to know that there is a real cost here, and that they're going to get real service at the end of that cost. That's what I think. Thank you.
Anytime, yeah. Of
Thank
course,
you.
we're always,
Thank you for your time.
anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to approve Mr. McDougal and Mr. Rose.
And second that?
Motion has been made and seconded for approval of J. Douglas McDougal and Jared Rose to the Cultural Council. Is there a motion been made and seconded? Any questions? Mr. Brown? Mr. Gavey?
No questions, thank you.
No questions?
Mr. Gito? All in favor? Are we voting them together? Yeah, we'll vote them as submitted, as, one motion for both teams. So, on the motion, Mr. Sarah? We can do it separately. No, go ahead, just vote. All right, so on the motion, Mr. Brown? No. Mr. Gavey?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes?
Sorry about that.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, thank you. All right, so moving on to our public hearing for 8:15. Is the petitioner joining us remotely? Okay, so we will move on if there's nobody here. Okay, and, I'm sorry? Yes, it's a public hearing for, we'll just keep going if he shows up. Yeah, if he shows up, we'll go on and we'll have the hearing late. So, because right now there's nobody here, so, and, well, no, we would, if he's not here at the close, we'll have Deborah, we'd have to re-advertise it anyway, so we would have to do that, and, or we could actually open it. We could open it and let it sit out there, yeah. Yeah, and just table it,
You could
yeah.
open a table, then you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about the
Okay.
advertising. Then you don't hurt
Okay,
the guy
all right,
either.
that's a good idea. So would you make that motion? Motion's been made to open the public hearing? Is there a second?
Second.
On the second, motion's made and seconded on the motion, Mr. Carrara? Yes. Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes?
Mr. Gito? Yes. Chair votes in favor, so, okay. I believe, well, yeah, no, we don't have to read it, okay. Yeah, no, I was going to read the notice, but it's open, so we can read that after. All right, so on the motion, Mr. Gito, you made the motion is seconded. Yes. All right. Ms. Roberts?
Yes?
Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
Mr. Carrara? Yes. And the chair votes in favor. Okay, so let's make sure, let them know if they don't show up at the next meeting, they shouldn't be open. So,
Tabling it to the next meeting.
yes.
That should have been my motion.
To
Okay. I
to the
thought that's what it was.
21st meeting,
to the
not the
21st.
special on the 14th,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I don't want them on before, housing. I don't want them to have to wait until these people.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so that motion's been made, the issue has been tabled, so on to town manager's annual review. And I will recognize Mr. Cavey, who is the keeper of the records here.
Yeah, so I have sent you all an email with links to all of the work papers that were completed. I will fill people in on some sort of the high-level information, and I'll share my screen, so you should be able to see it up there as well. 1 second.
We on number 8, Joe?
Yes.
I'll make a statement.
Oh, yeah, actually, you want to do that now?
If you're going to talk about it, I am.
Yeah, that's what we're starting to talk about now. So with that, Mr. Cavey, if you bear with me 1 second and recognize Mr. Carrara.
Sure.
I am not going to take any part of this review. I'm going to step away.
Okay.
And I won't be voting on anything or doing the review.
Okay. Deb, did you get that? Okay, for the record? Okay. Scott's stepping aside It's not going to take place, any action on the town manager's review? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's required, but it's up to you. You're not taking any action, so you can sit. Yeah. Okay, so, all right, Mr. Cavey, thank you.
Sure. So, thanks. Along with the in the folder that with all the information I sent you, there was a aggregate of all of our scores. Let me share that so that the public can see it, and also we're able to see it up on the screens. 1 second. Okay, so just as a reminder of how this was laid out, hopefully you're able to see my screen. It looks like it's broadcasting over there. So we had areas that we were evaluating. We have areas of responsibility. Those include, you can see in this column B here, fiscal management, the relationship with the board, town meeting, and the community, long-range planning, government operations, and community and intergovernmental relations. For each one of those general areas, we had individual evaluation items, is how I worded them, and they fit into two categories. Either they are, as of currently, an annual expectation, and then there will be a goal specific to the current fiscal year. And so we each independently performed evaluations to the extent that we were able to. If there were any areas where we felt that we were not able to provide information or provide a review, they will show up here as NAs and will not impact the overall rating. As Mr. Carrera had mentioned, he did not participate, so I'm actually just going to hide for the time being his information. Overall, let's just get right down to let's tell the important stuff first. When we look down at the averages, we see that they're fairly uniform. 4.12, that was Dr. Grimm's self-review. 4.19, 3.65. I also have 4.12, and Mr. Gito was at 3.29. The overall average was 3.87, and if we exclude the town manager's review and try to just get figure out what the board specifically viewed, then we see that it does not change in any material way. It goes from down to 3.81. In all aspects, certainly meeting expectations in many areas, exceeding, and in several areas. She showed outstanding leadership. And I think that many of these places we were in agreement. Now with COVID-19, where these goals did come out before then, I'm not going to speak for any other member of the select board, but at least for myself, and I think based on what I'm seeing, I think there was a universal sense that there is no area on this evaluation for extraordinary, events like worldwide pandemics. And so it seemed like there was definitely some areas where, if given a normal year, we might expect more. But given the fact that we are wrestling with something unique, I believe that there was an understanding that there were priorities that sort of became known to all of us after this, that they took priority over some of these items. And so I think that's reflected both in the self-evaluation and in the evaluation of each member of the select board. I'm not going to go one by one. I think people can, if would like to comment individually, we certainly should. I did aggregate the comments as well, so you can kind of see who had any particular thought. I imagine that the important things they will lay out here, but my understanding is that this is all public record now, And so anybody who wants to see what an individual member of the board wanted to write, they have that there as well as Dr. Grimm. So that is sort of the overview of what we have here. When we did the evaluations ourselves, just as a reminder, let's see, we had, actually, what we have here works. These points, when we were evaluating, were based on the criteria you can see right here. We were grading based on the score column, right? So we have outstanding, above expectations, meets expectations, below expectations, needs improvement, and unable to judge. And you can see how each one of them has a value. And then if anybody had a question about what exactly it meant for something to be outstanding or above expectation and so on, there's a short definition to help clarify what that might be. And based on my conversations with a couple members as they were filling them out, it seemed like everybody felt pretty comfortable with at least the way that this was laid out. I will pass it back to the chair. I know that Dr. Grimm had also provided a number of additional reports and some information to sort of help build out a better understanding, clarifying both her scores, but also just what the year looked like from the front lines. Mr. Chair, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Cavey. What I would just like, if I can just take this, and I'm going to then look to Mr. Gito and Ms. Roberts on the comments, anything that you would like to expand on out of your comments there or not, or we just move on. I didn't leave any comments in this section. I didn't think really it was necessary for me specifically because my judging was probably different than everyone else, as I was judging Dr. Grimm's job performance based on my relationship with basically every town manager except for the two interims dating back to 1992. And I think that the only one that Mr. Gito will remember some of the older town managers as well. And I just see so much better of a strong presence of the town manager and the ability to follow through and properly communicate. I think is one of the top two that of the town managers I have served with over the years. So that was just, if anyone was asking why there was, internally you say, geez, why didn't somebody leave a question? So with that, I will saddle with Ms. Roberts on your comments. If you would like to elaborate on anything there, you don't have to if you don't want to, but just this opportunity that you had those comments, and if you choose to, and then when you're done, Mr. Gito, the same. If there's anything you want to expand on in those comments, or just so that it's all here and out in the open.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Dr. Grimm. I know you haven't had an opportunity to look at this before you walked into to this meeting, and it's probably, you didn't know what to expect. But the comments that I think I've shared with you just in passing should have given you some comfort that I thought you were just right on. And I would always say that publicly. But being human, there are always opportunities for improvement. And that area of opportunity is one, of course, munis. So, and I know that's explainable, especially in the clerk's area, that has not been implemented, but I know it's coming. The other is the Human Resource Task Force. I knew it was the job descriptions and the whole process of recruiting was in development, but I hadn't seen it. So, and then the capital project plan, taking that deep dive, that multi-year capital project plan, I knew it was in development, but I hadn't seen it. So I evaluated, and it's basically all of our board members, we're not too far apart, and and we did not see, once again, we did not see each other's scoring, but you you do a great job, but the capital project plan, multi-year, is very important, so we know the direction that, and maybe we need to give you more feedback about that, so you can feel comfortable knowing that, hey, what are we going to do with the armory? Can we make a decision on that? You know, just as an example. Or this is such a flat organization, and you do take a lot on your shoulders. So maybe delegation is another, but we really have such a flat organization. There's not many people to delegate to, and trust is very important. So do the people that you would delegate to, do they have that skill set that would keep us compliant and give us that high level of productivity? I don't know the answer to that, and I defer to you. But overall, those were my comments on the sheet, and I just really enjoy working with you, and so thank you very much.
Thank you. And if I could, Mr. Chair, just respond briefly. Vice Chair Roberts, I think you bring up an important point about delegation. And I have been very fortunate to have created the Development Services Division now in the Human Services Division more recently with Janice and Mark. And they're extremely trusted advisors. And I think that that's been a help. But working toward greater delegation, bringing in, for instance, code enforcement and moving that whole division under Mark Tisdale this year is sort of a continuation of some of that restructuring. And we just did this year some major restructuring with DPW and facilities and some consolidation there to have better feeding up to me, because I had the option when I was hired to hire an assistant town manager, and the chair and I talk about this a lot. That's sort of a generic person, and for me, if I could empower a few people that have skill sets that sort of complement me, areas where I am not as strong. I'm not a human services expert, and I'm not a town engineer. And so I have those people to help, and now we've beefed out that DPW end a little bit. So part of it is just that, and I think you hit it on the head, trying to maintain financially flat or as best as you can, financially prudent through restructuring, still get the service that I need and the input that I need. But I do want to just briefly on this very quickly, and I'm very grateful for the scores, but I do have to thank my team for those as well. I mean, I don't operate in a vacuum. I operate we have a couple members out here, and I sat at my staff meeting today and I looked around the room and I thought I'm very, very, very lucky with what I have for a team. So thank you.
And Mr. Gito, any comments?
First of all, I enjoy working with you. I really do. And I believe when you first came in, I said that I would do whatever I could to help you. I didn't evaluate you on all of the elements here because I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I gave you some high marks, and I gave you some marks that were not as high. And probably if I'd been able to fill in the middle, the overall would have been would have been a little different as well. I think that you know that I'm really concerned about the fiscal state of the town and the importance of being able to, in the long run, provide the resources in our operating budget to provide the services long term that the town needs and not just make decisions year to year. And if this were a company, we would have to do that. Or we would go out of business because we couldn't provide the services and people would go somewhere else. Well, people will go somewhere else if we don't provide the services. And then we'll have less to do because the value of the community will go down. and we could spiral in the wrong direction, and that's not a good thing. So on those points, you didn't get as high marks as I would like to be able to provide. On the other hand, and this is a very important piece, you are an excellent communicator. You really are. And we're lucky to have you to be able to do that and promote the town, promote the services. We have to deliver those services. And that's the balance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll, oh, okay, sure, go ahead, right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't include any written comments because in a sense, didn't feel necessary to go into the weeds on each individual item. But I did have general comments I just wanted to share. First, on the areas of responsibility, fiscal management, I think that the work that you have done since you've arrived has been, I don't want to oversell it, but I think it's been revolutionary. I think there are so many areas where we were deficient and had been for such a long time. I think we had to build up. Well, I shouldn't say we. I did. You had to build up. Yeah, I'll take credit whenever it's good, right? But you had to build up from scratch a system and a culture of financial management that didn't exist, at least not to the extent it does now. And I know it continues to be a work in progress, but that is huge, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate the work that you put into that. Because as much as we just try to do good things, it really does come down to what can we pay for, and so the strong financial management is so critical to that. With regard to the relationship to the board, just to repeat what others have said, your communication skills are great. I think you are what I found you to be honest, diplomatic, respectful, and eager to provide additional insight whenever we need it. Really, I see like no area with regard to communication where you struggle, especially with the select board. And with town meeting, I feel very much the same way. I think you've been really great in communicating what it is we're trying to achieve to town meeting very well. I know that there are, to be frank, I think that there were during the course of the process leading up to town meeting. I know you have to meet with a lot of boards and committees leading up to it, and some of those I think we can all agree there was more friction than we hope to see in the future. And that I think was, I'll get to another point later, which will kind of address this. But long range planning, I think that's where we need to see a little bit more. But you're perfectly aware of that. As far as priorities, I think we have lived the last year and a half really trying to figure out what to do this week. Like today, what can we do so that within 12 days we can continue operations. So that took a backseat in some ways. I know it was always on your mind, but you couldn't always devote the time to it, and that's understandable. Government operations, I think, generally have improved significantly, especially like the efforts you've undertaken to take advantage of the strengths of the staff that we already have, sort of rearrange things rather than say, I need a person that can do this. I need a person that can do that. Instead, you're sort of looking at the people and seeing which ways they could contribute. That would be very rewarding to them. There's a lot of different types of people. I can speak only for myself in this respect, but as also an employee in an organization, I love it when that happens, rather than being kind of told that these are the 10 things you're supposed to do today. Instead, when people really get to know you and what you're capable of, and taking advantage of that and providing opportunities, and I've seen you do that time and time again, and I think it's really excellent. Community and intergovernmental relations. I don't have very strong opinions about that one. So the one thing I did want to mention, I think that this is this might come off, it might sound odd or something. Like it's almost like one of those like interview questions where you're like, "What's my biggest weakness?" Is that I care too much. You know, it's not like that. But I don't mean it to come out that way. You know, if I had any concern, it would be that you are you're very smart, you're very dedicated, and you're very intense. And I think that in the way you work. And I just don't want to see you burn out. And I would love to see you take advantage of, you know, you have vacation time. I haven't been counting the days, but if you have not been going on, you know, as much vacation as you have allotted, I really recommend it. I think, you know, I want to see you here for the long haul. And I think that if I was going to give any criticism on the general things, is that I want to see you kind of refreshed and not burn out, because you're very good for the town, I believe, and I just would hate to see, you know, during that rough patch, you were put through the grinder. You know, that's the system we have. It's how our government works. But you know, there's only so much of that a human being can sort of tolerate. You need to be able to sort of walk away from it a little bit, get detached a bit, and I'll just end it with that. But working with you has been fabulous. It's been very rewarding for me, and it's just such a pleasure to know you and have the opportunity to work with you.
I had mentioned one of those to you as well, about taking the Sunday phone calls from people when they call. You know, a day off is a day off. You should trust your, I agree with Steve 100%. Let your staff do their job. You sing their praises, let them do their job when you're not here.
I go home and play with donkeys and cows, and that tends to relax me a little bit.
Yeah, and then you'll be on the phone, you won't pay attention, and you'll get hurt out there, and then where are you?
And how many of you have heard the mooing and the braying in the
Yeah,
background when you've been on the phone with me? Or the crowing of the rooster?
Okay, great. So we'll get copies out to everybody and on those, and include Mr. Carrara on that. I mean, he didn't vote on it, take any action on it, but it's a public document. He should be able to see it, you know, and just see what everybody else sees. So, okay. So with that, I'm sorry.
Hi. Oh, Mr. Chairman, I believe this is the evaluation she gets the incentive bonus. Am I correct?
I
think
didn't get to that document. Where is that? We haven't. That's
contract, but that's something
Yes.
we have to
yeah.
discuss.
So we'll have. All right. So we'll have to do this. We'll schedule an executive session
Okay.
and to look at that. And
Thank you, Mr.
I
Chairman.
don't know. Based on this tonight, sounds like we kind of have to give it to her, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could just take a moment to thank everybody, and I know, Mr. Cavey, you were on my original hiring committee, so I think I have actually worked with you the longest, and I thought that was ironic that we actually scored with the identical bottom line number. Was the person on the board that I've actually worked with the longest. But I want to thank all of you, and Mr. Gito, you're right, when I first came in, you did come to see me and were very open with me at the beginning, and it's been a pleasure working with all of you, and it is my honor to work for the town and for the people of Stoughton. Ultimately, that's who I work for. You appoint me, and I respect you greatly, but I work for the people of Stoughton, and as do you, and it really is my honor to do so. Thank you.
Okay, Scott, you want to come back up? We're moving. Well, you can stay there if you want, and you can vote from back there. Won't be the first time somebody voted from the back of the room. I think I did that a few times. All right, so we have the consent agenda. Hey, we picked up a half hour, you know. That's a good thing. Consent agenda is the payroll, bill and warrants, and any other documents that come before the meeting. Item B, water connection application of Wells Construction, 535 South Main Street, rear connection to Central Street, Lot 171. and the open session minutes of 8/17/2021. Would anyone like to pull anything of those items? Mr. Gito? The minutes, they are in they should be in your blue packet. Oh, you have a question on the minutes? Oh, okay, I thought you didn't see them, I'm sorry. Ms. Roberts?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cavey? Mr. Carrara? You want to pull anything?
Yeah, I just want to pull B.
B, the water connection, okay. All right, so Mr. Gito on the minutes?
Okay. Mr. Gito expressed concern that there was not enough time to have the downtown, or especially to have the downtown zoning article ready for town meeting. I think that's close enough. I think that's really what I,
Okay.
just to finish what the major part of my concern was.
Deborah, you have that?
Now, could you just repeat the last part?
It was especially to have the downtown zoning article ready for town meeting.
Okay, and Mr. Carrara?
Mr. Chairman, next time we have a water connection, it'd be good to have like a plot plan with this application, so you could look and see where this piece of property is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no.
It'd make things easy that way. I could look at it, and I'm not against it. I'm just saying, can we put that in as part of the criteria, so we don't just get a piece of paper that, oh, let's just give out the water connection. Sometimes it bears what it's doing.
Sure. Robin, make sure we take care of that? We work with Deborah and make sure we have those?
Yep.
I would imagine that's something Phil has right at his fingertips in the computer.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
just want to mention that you come from the engineering department and the water department sees these before they get to us.
Okay, yeah, but when we vote these, just to have them give us a copy of the map. Yeah, thank you. All right, so on the consent agenda, is anybody to make a motion?
Motion to approve as amended.
Motion's been made by Mr. Gito to approve as amended. Ms.
Second.
Roberts? All right, motion made and seconded on the consent agenda. Mr. Gito? Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
Mr. Carrara?
Yes.
And the chair votes in favor. All right, so we will be going into executive session to approve executive session minutes of 8/17/2021 and to discuss strategy with respect with the negotiations with respect to litigation pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Paragraph A3, Jane Doe versus the Town of Stoughton. So on the motion to go into executive session, would anybody like to make that?
Motion so made.
Motion's been made and seconded to go into executive session.
Second.
Right, on the motion, Mr. Carrara?
Yes.
Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Gito? Yes. And the chair votes in favor. We will adjourn from executive session and will not come into open session again. Good night, everybody. Be healthy and be happy.